Okay, so I really wasn't planning on making a YouTube video today, but there was a commenter on my most recent video about getting this 4:3 aspect ratio with anamorphic lenses and their adapters. It just had me questioning whether I knew everything about anamorphic adapters or not, because I thought I did, and I had actually ignored a critical piece of anamorphic adapters. I noticed there wasn't really any information on the question asked. So I did some math and then did some testing. Turns out things don't quite line up. Okay, for context, me and this commenter were simply talking about, is it worth it to use anamorphic adapters on lenses because it seems that they reduce the depth of field because anamorphic adapters are slower. For example, this one from Sirui is a T29, and the one he's referencing from Greyjoy is a what did he say? It was a T28 or F28. Technically there is a difference there. And so we were just talking about it, and so it got me really thinking. He said the taking lens is F1.4, and the Greyjoy adapter he's using is a 1.35 adapter, which I thought was interesting. And he said that that has a technical aperture of f2.8, and that is from Greyjoy's official page / Blazar, it's the same company now. As you can see, they're not aperture blades. However, aperture blades aren't indicative of an aperture. You can still have one without it. But that did have me thinking, okay, that's what they recommend on their website. Both Greyjoy / Blazar and Sirui say that's what it is. But I also noticed, and this is why I've ignored it, the anamorphic adapter from Sirui is the same aperture as their lenses. So I just figured, oh, well, it was kind of designed to go on their lenses anyway. It's like literally printed on the side, 1.6 ana to 2x anamorphic. And I was just thinking, oh, that's what it's related. And so I've ignored that for years. Turns out this commenter was absolutely right. I personally notice way more depth of field when using 1.8 lenses. This is a 1.8 lens from Nikon. I use the 50mm, and I actually notice a very visible difference when shooting on a 58mm Helios 442 at f2.8, which should be the same as the adapter, and shooting on the 50mm, which is an f1.8. But the 1.8 has more depth of field. Although I did some testing, turns out it does lose light, it does lose depth of field, but not according to the math. So before we get into that math, I kind of got to back up a little bit. This is going to be a little nerdy. If you don't care about the nerd stats, you can skip along. However, if you're considering buying an anamorphic adapter or buying fast lenses for an anamorphic adapter, watch this part. Basically, if you're going to shoot on a mirrorless camera that has a 16 or 17:9 sensor, you're going to have to crop roughly about 25% into your image to get the CinemaScope 239 or 240 aspect ratios. But if you get an anamorphic adapter, you don't have to crop at all. Now, the anamorphic adapters you should be getting are between 125 and 133. Those are gonna be your optimal adapters in order to get you that look out of camera without cropping. This is where things get interesting. You're getting about 50 to 60% more image by not cropping and using an adapter, which equates to about half a stop. I know that can be a little confusing, but it's essentially half a stop because you're able to move the camera closer, you're able to get half a stop more depth of field, kind of like sensor crops and sensor sizes. The difference between the micro four thirds and full frame is 2x crop. Therefore, it is a full stop of light difference, kind of, pretty much. I know that's confusing, but we're gonna move on from that because that would take forever to explain. But anyways, you're getting 50 to 58% or 50 to 60%-ish, depending on the camera and the lens you're using. But if I slap this on a T2.4 lens and it stops it down to T8, because of that crop ratio, I'm not losing anything between T2.4 and T2.8, because a full stop would be between T2 and T8. Splitting that down the middle, T2.4 means that by not cropping and putting the adapter on instead, I'm getting the same depth of field as I would if I cropped on that T2.4 lens. So that was a lot. It wasn't quite true. That was the math. Like, that's what I did in terms of math, but I tested it and it just was completely incorrect. I decided for accuracy's sake, I was gonna throw this on the Blazar lens that I had on my camera right then and there, just so I could turn the aperture and see where it was at, because sometimes changing your aperture in camera lies to you a little bit, and I didn't wanna risk that. So I'm gonna lose some light from this because it has extra glass and coatings on it, and I noticed that. And I was losing a little bit more than just what coatings would allow, but it certainly wasn't half a stop to a full stop. I shot at T2, T2.8, and T4 with and without the adapter, and I was just noticing there was very minimal darkening because of the adapter. It was noticeable, very visible, I could look at it, but I didn't really notice on my monitor. I had to throw it in DaVinci Resolve to see the difference, which, you know, that in and of itself kind of tells me that, you know what, maybe I'm not losing as much as I thought. However, I did notice a very big depth of field difference, especially when stopping down a little more. Yes, this will suck some of your depth of field out. I don't think it is the math that it should be, like scientifically what they say about the adapter, I don't think is quite that bad. So if you're shooting with a lens that is f1.8 and you put this T2.9 or a T2.8 adapter on, I don't think it's really gonna stop your lens down that far in terms of depth of field. I would say maybe it's half a stop, if that. I wouldn't even say it's past half a stop of extra stopping down. So if you are shooting at T2, maybe it'll take you to a T4. Since this is a T2.9, maybe it'll go that far, but I really don't think it is, just because I do notice a very visible difference when I shoot with 1.8 lenses versus 2.8 lenses, even though technically there shouldn't be. That's basically my discovery. That's pretty much it. I don't have much more to say about the topic, honestly. If you guys have some tests, if you've done this test yourself, leave a comment below. If you find a video that explains this a little better, I would love to see it, because I don't really have the tools to do this test super scientifically. I'm kind of just looking at it and looking at my histogram and vector scope and waveforms. I also looked in camera at my false color, and I was just noticing very minimal differences. However, it's not like the most scientific, which is why I can only tell you guys it's an estimate. But that does lead me to a question. Should you buy an anamorphic adapter if you're gonna lose light? In my experience, I've never even noticed that you lose light with the anamorphic adapter and that you lose depth of field with the anamorphic adapter. I knew you lost a little because of extra glass and coatings, obviously, but I've never noticed it significantly. So yeah, I would recommend this anamorphic adapter. If you want the Sure one, I have a link down below. I have tons of videos on it. I shoot on the Blazar Remus lenses a lot, but I still do like this adapter. It's still great, it's still useful, and I find when I want a different look from different lenses, the adapter's low-key a go-to, especially if you need close focus and you're gonna get a like extreme close-up of an object or somebody's face. You can take the adapter off in order to get that, which is pretty easy and simple. So I would still recommend getting an anamorphic adapter, but you might run into a little bit of issues with faster lenses. This commenter seems to think that shooting at a T4 with lenses that do go that fast are heavily affected. So while I might not be experiencing as much of a difference with these 1.8 lenses, you might experience a larger difference with T4, but obviously the faster a lens you have, the more offset you do have with anamorphic adapters. So I would just say, if you have these, test them out for yourself, see what differences you find. Again, comment that below, I would love to see about it. If this video was like mildly useful or interesting to you and you're still watching, like, subscribe, I'd appreciate it. Until next time.